Yeah, let's go Lynx-Sun. I mean, we kind of hashed out everything that we could there, and we'll just see what the Liberty do in that final round.
Yeah, it's going who they play. Who they play. Look, so this series, man, this series has been amazing. And it has been exactly the styles make fights like down to the wire almost every game battle that everybody expected it to be that made it such a hard series to predict. The Sun pull it out in game four, a really, really impressive performance. Before we get it, so this is something that I think is so telling for the entire series that I was looking at this morning. The series score right now for all four games, if you combine them, is 319 versus 316 for the Lynx. The Lynx are leading just by 3 in the entire series, which somehow does feel accurate. I do feel like that minuscule point is exactly how much better I feel like the Lynx are than the Sun, but it's so tiny. And I was texting a friend of the show, Sabrina Merchant, about it, and she added to that point that if you include the regular season, that margin is 1 point for the Sun. So this is a razor thin series.
It's a razor thin series, and it's exactly, as a fan of the W, what you want to see. Like, I'm so excited for this next game. I cannot tell you how excited I am. I'm already, getting out my popcorn for it because literally these teams are going to scrap. Like they are going
Hmm.
to have to claw for every single thing. You talk about the point margin, how close it is. Every single thing is going to be close. But what I will tell you is that the Minnesota Lynx, if y'all don't get that defense up, like I don't it's not going to be too good for you. I saw that they allowed Connecticut to shoot 57% from three, 55% from the field, and 50 points in the paint as well. And in the presser, Nafisa said that it all comes down to defense. Like, we can be known for our offense all that we want. They're obviously a very offensive minded team. We've seen that all season with them. But if we allow that to happen, if our defense is that terrible, we're going to lose every single time. So you got to get that defense up, period.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, and it was also surprising. I do think that the Sun made some really good adjustments on both ends of the floor. I do feel like a lot of it was also their defense as well. Like your defense, if it can't get itself set, and you can't when you shoot from three the way that the Lynx did last night as well, is also going to be part of the issue as well. So, but I just like I want to shout out Stephanie White right now, real quick, because her lineup recipes all season have
Man.
just been so awesome. And like especially when you consider like all they've had to toggle through this year between the Marina Mabrey trade and then also Tiffany Mitchell being out, like, and also man, it's good to see her on the sidelines too. Like just finding out that she was dealing with sepsis is like that's terrifying.
It is.
Yeah, it's terrifying. But just like her being out, um having the lineup variability even just through the series that they've had now, working Ty Harris, who was awesome,
Oh my
comes
goodness.
back, scores 20 points on 11 shots, spaces the floor for them, like gives them another presence that allows them to play small. It's just been a really banner season for Steph White in my opinion. And also, making all those changes and not alienating anybody, like being able to keep Bree Jones as involved as she can be in a series against a team like the Lynx that plays as fast as they do, um, while also like not hurting the team too much. It's chess, man. It's just, like because like yes, like we all look at lineup data. Like yeah, they're better when they play small. Everybody knows that, especially against like a team like the Lynx. But at the same time, like you have to keep everybody involved. You have to keep everybody feeling confident at the same time. And she's just like she's done such a great job balancing those two forces.
She has. And I mean, look, that's another thing about this game, that you have two coaches that have done a fantastic job of making sure that their teams are balanced and their teams are playing at their highest potential and making adjustments and all of that. You look at both of these. So not only are we looking at two teams that are going to scrap and be matched up in amazing ways, we're looking at two coaches who are going to make the adjustments that they need to make sure that that game is as close as it, well, they don't want it to
Yeah.
be close, but to make sure that both of their teams are in it and they're doing it in the most efficient way.
I think it's going to be close. I mean, I was looking at the lines on FanDuel this morning, and it was like the Lynx are favored by 4.5. I feel like that's too much. I actually just think this series it's going to come down to like the final shot. I don't even know if I could make a prediction right now. I feel like it's going to be like multiple overtimes until the WNBA has to step in, and we have our first ever like 3-point contact shootout to win a series. It's like just like Marina versus Carlton going shot for shot. Like, I don't know. Like, that's honestly like this series is so razor thin. Like, I picked the Lynx in 5, but every time I talk about it, I'm like, man, like the Sun could pull it out, especially with Ty Harris back. Like, I feel like maybe that gives them like the little bit of edge that they need because I do feel like the Lynx are a little bit of a better team. But like Ty Harris, just like the way that trickles down, having her in the lineup gives gives them more opportunities to play small. But it also like now you don't necessarily have to rely on Bree. You don't have to rely on Nelson Adota, who has had a pretty tough series, honestly. Like after
Yeah.
being like having a really, really good series against the Fever, I just don't think that she's been able to match up and work her way around the rim the same way that she was able to against the Fever. Also, like shout out to Alana Smith on that one as well. She's just been so good down there. It's just now I don't know. Where are you at? Like where are you at? Because I am just confused at this point.
Listen, I'm confused too. I will say all year when I've been looking at the W, I have been thinking that the Lynx are going to be in the finals. This was something that I've said many times on our podcast. But now that we're in this series and we're looking at both of these teams, and when you were just talking about the Sun, the way that when one person is not in it, another person is popping up because they have that grit, they have that will. I mean, they literally have they will will themselves into a win, the Sun, when I look at them. And so literally,
Hmm.
and then obviously you have Alyssa Thomas too. I mean, who goes without saying, she is just phenomenal on every level, especially in postseason play. But you have all of that, and you have Dewana Bonner saying, who we we could talk about Dewana for a whole entire podcast, but you have her saying in the press conference afterwards, listen, I want to win. I'm old. Like, let's do this.
Hmm.
Let's get this done. And so you have every single one of these players who are like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to ball out, and I'm going to get this win. And so it's hard for me with a team like that to say that, no, the Lynx are going to win it. The Lynx are a great team. They play beautiful basketball that sometimes takes my breath away. They have amazing players, no doubt. A lot of players who are very underrepresented as players. People just they don't see
Hmm.
them as these like huge stars or people that are contributing, but they have them. They do, period. But when I look at both teams and I just look at the sheer grit of getting to that final series, I lean towards the Sun. But it is a small lean. It's like this much of a lean.
For anybody who's listening, Alicia didn't move. Like she really didn't move.
I
Like
mean,
she
maybe one curl
maybe an
moved.
inch. Like yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah, maybe one singular curl moved a little bit. Yeah, look, man, like the grit point is a really good one, and I think that it's also and look, both teams are pretty gritty. These are the number 1 and 2 defenses, right?
Without a doubt.
But I do think that the Sun have a little bit more of an edge in that regard just in terms of like their attitude, the players that they have. Like you said, it's gonna be a scrap. It's been a scrap, man. Like
Right.
Marina Mabry has
I didn't
just
even say
been
Dejanay
so
either.
yeah, Dejanay too, man. But like they're unfuckwithable, honestly. Like that is
Yes.
like the one thing I would say about the Sun is like, and Marina said it in an ESPN story. I can't remember who wrote it now. But shout out to that ESPN story. She also says like, look, man, like I grew up in Jersey, and the number one rule for me was don't get punked. And this team does not get punked, man. Like, and I feel like in like that game 3, it felt like the Lynx were almost like trying to punk them a little bit. Like there were all those technicals going back and forth. Her and Courtney Williams, former teammates, getting into it with Kayla McBride as well. Like I do think the Lynx can get on that level. Like Fee has even been spicier this season. Like it feels like they have like found that edge. Cheryl Reeve was also talking about it too, and one of the points that she made was that Courtney Williams is one of the big reasons that they have that edge now too. It's something that they were lacking this year. So it's like even on that front, I'm like, yes, like the Sun have more edge, but it's not like the Lynx don't. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
by no,
yeah.
I don't want people to come for me. By no means am I saying that the Lynx don't have an edge, because they do. But when I just look at the way they're talking about, this series and the way that
Hmm.
they're going in, there is just a very, like I said, a small
They
lean
got a
towards the
look.
Sun.
They have a
That
look.
yeah, they do. And I do want to say that obviously Mabry, love her on every level. She's getting into her head a little bit when she gets angry, though. It's like
Mm.
she takes herself out just a slight bit of the game when she's getting so, like, she gets more angry at herself than anybody. And it's like, you got to get over those things and keep that going, because they need you to be present, mentally, physically, all of that. I mean, we know
Yeah.
she's scrappy and she's going after everything, but we've seen it. I think a little bit this last series, where I was just like, no, just keep going. Like, I understand why you're mad, but we need you just to kind of drop that. That's the only thing I
100%.
would say.
100%. That's a really good point. And I think that you can also see it like especially like definitely when she gets into it with the other players. But also when her shot's not falling. I think she understands just how much this team relies on her to hit threes, that she puts a lot of pressure on herself. And she is one of those shooters. It's a little bit more feast or famine. So I think when she misses a few, she gets worried that it's going to be one of those nights. But then she starts pressing more and more. I do think one of the good adjustments that Steph White makes every once in a while too is like when Marina's having one of those nights, she'll kind of set her up from like 10 feet, 14 feet, see if like one of those easy ones will fall too. So I think that that's something I'd like to see them lean on. Like when the margins are so thin for a game five, like elimination, win or go home, like those shots, those like little lapses in focus, they can really, really matter and they can really, really screw with you. Like you don't want to get into a place where like you miss two shots in a row and then you just like go and fling one up, which you do see happen. Then you'll see Alyssa Thomas shaking her head and being like clapping her hands, being like, "Let's get into the flow of the offense. Let's use the whole clock." Like she'll like get frustrated too. And I mean, with Alyssa Thomas, man, I feel like it's also on some level, it's like the curse of genius. Like she can like in the same way that you see like that you saw a lot with like Caitlin Clark, where she would like be like going to her teammates like making hand signals of like, no, go there, go there. It's like she sees everything before everybody else does. And not everybody else can see it right away, of course, right? Like that's just like one of those things, like with a player like that. She's dished out 60 assists in the playoffs so far, and the next closest player to her is, at 37 is Chelsea Gray. So I think that's pretty good.
Just slightly.
Yeah,
Just
it's
slightly.
pretty good. Yeah, but I mean, it is one of those dynamics too. You can't really let your intensity become your enemy, I guess. And they're pretty like they are a veteran team. They're pretty good at that. And I do think like to your point on Bonner as well, like Bonner is going to be really key in keeping them steady and has been really key in keeping them steady as well. Like she's like man, like aging like a fine wine, like it shows. Like just like she said, she's old and she's first all time in playoff minutes. It shows. Her composure, her ability to say after game four, like, hey man, like we gotta throw this out, like breathe. And she said, like, look, sometimes you put so much pressure on yourself that you overcomplicate things. We just got to make some adjustments. And they did. I mean, they just looked so poised. And now man, like they're going into a game five where you need that more than ever.
Do you think that the home court advantage of the Lynx will have any, stamp on the game, or is it just like, we don't care where we're playing for
Look, it's
both
always
teams? Like,
nice to play at home.
yeah.
I'm actually curious about how this has been working in the WNBA because I think in the last few years, in the NHL and in the NBA, home court advantage just has kind of withered away as something that's important. Maybe that's due to like in those leagues, just having like all these resources at your disposal to allow you to be as rested as possible. Obviously, like the W is still getting on that level, but they do have like the charter flights now, so maybe that could be a factor. But like for I guess for this series specifically, that's more of like a larger question to kind of look into in the off season. But like this series specifically, they've won there already. And like the Lynx have a good home crowd, but they don't have one of those like don't come for me, Lynx fans. You have a great home crowd. You don't have an intimidating home crowd. Like you have a fun,
Mm.
awesome home crowd. You know what I mean? But it's not a place that I would go to and be like, God, I really don't want to play there. I think it seems like a fun place to play. It doesn't seem like a place where, you like let's say Mabry like does come out and she's like 0 for 2. I think in certain arenas, like you go 0 for 2, they start jawing at you.
Right. You're
You
gonna hear
start
it.
getting into it with the crowd. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Lynx
Certainly
are
in New
almost
York.
like it's so exactly like,
Yeah.
like Spike Lee starts talking to you, things like that, right? Like, look, man, I'm Canadian, so I can say it. Like, there's a Minnesota nice aspect to that home crowd. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a little different vibes wise. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think that for a team that is as experienced as the Sun are, that has won there before in the regular season, took game one there. You like having home court. Sometimes it's not sometimes it's nice to not have the distraction, not have people being like, "Hey, can I get season tickets?" all that stuff too. So I don't
Right.
know. I don't know. Like these teams are so evenly matched. Anything can make a difference, but I just don't think it's going to be the biggest factor. What do you think?
I don't think so either. I think the Sun really don't care where they play. They gonna play hard. They're gonna, go all out in every single way in whatever gym they're in. And that's just how I feel. So I don't think so either. I know Nafisa talked about how important it was, and it kind of had me thinking about it for a little while. That's why I asked the question. But at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, I feel like these two teams are just playing in a gym with almost nobody in it because it's the game is on the line. You're either going to the finals or you're not. They both have the grit that we've talked about. They both have the edge. They both have excellent coaching, and it's just going to be a battle that I'm excited to see. I will
Yeah.
say though, given that the Sun do advance, if they do, it will be exciting to me because both franchises have never won a championship. The Liberty
Yeah.
hasn't won and the
hmm
Sun hasn't won, and so it would be a first for both, for one of them. And that's an exciting kind of like storyline as somebody who, you and I cover this. It's an exciting storyline for me to think about is having a franchise that would have a first championship win.